This video is not scripted. I'm just going to be talking off the cuff. This is obviously mostly just a video that I'm making for me, but if you get something out of it, that's great. If you're learning Japanese, it's fucking hard, but I hope you're having fun. Hi there, I'm Nia. Today I'm doing something a little weird for, I guess, how I've operated on the internet for a while. I'm going to be reviewing my Japanese study methods, and additionally just kind of the feelings I've accrued based on spending my time in this way for exactly how long I've done that. So how long have I done that? Let's see. So I split up my actual time learning into a few categories. Active listening, Anki, which is a spaced repetition software just for flashcards. Japanese learning meta, passive listening, reading, and then going through a textbook. And as you can see, active listening is the big one, and that's pretty obvious, right? Especially if you're familiar with how language learning works, where you're dedicating a lot of that time to just actively listening, actively focusing on what's being said. Anki, flashcards, is my second largest, easily, and then everything else besides that is kind of wishy-washy. I would say truly the two that have helped me the most are active listening and then reading, as in reading Japanese text, not reading supplementary text like the textbook category. I'm tracking this using Pendulums, which is an open source piece of software that has not been worked on in like 3 or 4 years. I really don't recommend you use Pendulums as well. I'm gonna switch to something different for 2025, but I also figured that if I get all the data out of it, then I can stop using it and find something better. These other categories kind of show the places I realized were very bad for me learning. For example, Japanese learning meta was very much an excuse I made up to just kind of flounder around, kind of just watch content I wanted to watch that promotes the idea that I'm learning without actually teaching me anything. If you watch a lot of people that talk about learning languages or learning Japanese, if you're doing the same thing that I'm doing, you're gonna see a lot of these. Like Dogen does a lot of videos like this. Or dudes who make videos like, this is the coolest kanji I've ever seen. Here it is, isn't it big? It's just a lot of content that is really trying to get your attention and is not at all actually giving you information or giving you exposure to Japanese language. Passive learning is not learning. Something is happening in the background, I'm not focused on it, it's just noise. Reading, I mostly made use of my textbook I used was just Genki, really just Genki, or specific online resources that are basically like textbooks. I liked Genki. I don't recommend Genki unless you feel like the way it teaches is a way that you like. It's very structured. It's not like any other learning method that I'm using where I'm just doing it because I want to. If you feel like you need structure for your learning, Genki's great then. But I really dislike that rigid structure that you apply to the process of learning. Here are reading and listening by themselves. In my busiest month, October, I did a total of 11 hours of just reading and just actively listening to Japanese content of like my total 14, 15 hours that entire month. For active listening, my primary means are either podcasts or using Tatsumoto Ren's guide to sentence mining. And sentence mining, if you're not familiar, is basically just the process of watching a piece of media, finding information you don't know, and if it's really relevant to you, take it out of that piece of media, make it a flashcard, review that flashcard. For beginners content, I mostly just did anime that I was kind of interested in watching anyway. I've been rewatching Lucky Star, I watched some Nichijou, I watched some Azumanga Daioh. It's, yeah. My biggest struggle, honestly, with active listening is finding that I don't watch anime. That's not a way that I spend my time unless I'm prompted to, which means that finding active listening content that is actually just something I would be spending my time doing is difficult. For podcasts, I did a lot of Nihongo kon teppei, which is just a lot of this guy talking in fairly simple Japanese in 3 or 4 minute episodes. hugely, I feel like I can understand him, which is nice. He gives a lot of context to what he's saying, and often it's things that you've already heard and thought about plenty. I'm looking at my phone right now. I also listened to some Gemu Nantoka, which is subtitled Grateful Gaming Life. This was something I classified as active listening, but a lot of the time it was so specialized into, like gaming words and shit that even if I selected an episode based on Sonic the Hedgehog or Shadow of the Colossus, games I already like, it wasn't like I was actually getting that much information from them. It was closer to passive listening than I would have liked. My podcasts were typically listened to while driving a car, which once or twice I did schedule that as passive listening, especially if afterwards I was like, shit, I did not follow any of that. I was too busy following the rules of the road. You will see two really big blocks on here of time, and they are one, Babel, which that is to say Projecto Babel, a mostly Japanese community dedicated to just learning a bunch of other languages, just getting super immersed in a bunch of languages. They're very cool. The meetups I mostly attended were the ones about Tokipona. If you know me, that's probably pretty obvious. The cool thing about these meetups for me is that I was kind of in 3 languages at once, right? At a meetup dedicated to Tokipona learning, I feel totally at peace because that's what I'm usually engaged in. I feel like these were pretty damn good ways to immerse myself in Japanese, although the fact that they are also using a little bit of English and a good amount of Tokipona means I'm probably not getting as much content as I could out of them, per se. Content, Jesus Christ. The other very large category on that list is Japanese Boot Camp, which was a service run by a YouTuber. The idea behind it was essentially like, hey, if you really want to get better at Japanese, you got to do it really hard every day. So here's a means for you to do it really hard every day, which at this time I signed up for it, it was like, what, like $2 or something? I'm like, yeah, sure. This is just like free immersion content. Bad idea. Really bad idea. I scheduled that boot camp specifically for when I was coming back from a trip out of state. That meant that in airports or on planes or what have you, what I was doing was studying. And in theory, I love this. I already study so much Japanese when I'm traveling or when I'm moving from place to place. What I found, having done that, is that yes, structure makes you study a lot of Japanese and do a lot of it, but it does not make you enjoy the process of learning Japanese. Surely the things I learned from that experience were really good, but I also dropped off so much of my regular everyday learning after that point because I was so fucking burnt out. If you want to learn Japanese, if you want to get better at Japanese, the way you should not do that is to structure it until you hate it. The way you learn a language should be making it apply to your life, making it relevant to how you spend your time. You need to make learning the language you want to learn just something you do and not something you want to convince yourself into doing. If you are learning Tokipona, how are you using Tokipona in your everyday life? Is it applicable to you? Are you finding places to read it every day? I can't confidently say if you enjoy the process, you will eventually learn the language because I'm not at a point where I feel like I've learned Japanese. I'm just at a point where I feel like I understand an okay amount of it. I think the biggest benefit of very structured learning, like Genki offers or like a classroom environment offers, is that it makes it something you are just going to do all the time no matter what. It forces it to be a part of your life, not in a way you enjoy, but just in a way that it's gonna be there. But if you just take a semester of Japanese and then that's where your learning stops because you're burnt out from, the thing you understand at schoolwork, you're gonna feel like shit afterwards, obviously, because you don't want to speak Japanese. That's a chore to you. I'm of the mindset now, based on the things I've heard and how I've operated, that if you are having to force yourself to learn a language, if you're forcing yourself to engage with it, if you're not enjoying what you're doing, you should really just drop it. If it's not going to apply to your life otherwise, get it away from you. Spend time doing what you actually want to do, what you enjoy. I think the thing that's killed me the most about learning Japanese is my mindset, and not the mindset of like, am I studying enough words today? Am I getting through enough? More like how I perceive myself is my greatest inhibition, which is a really silly thing to say, but I have this thought in my mind of what a Japanese learner looks like and how they operate and what they do. And that thought terrifies me. I spent so much of my childhood in this otaku mode, right? Where I was watching anime every day, I was eating Pocky, I was like, whoa, fucking Japanese video games, that's so cool. And I grew out of that, right? It was a thing I did in my childhood. When I think of adult non-Japanese people that engage with a lot of anime or engage with a lot of manga or stuff like that, I have this unkind perception in my head. I have this perception of Japan is this holy, interesting, sacred place to him where, you know, the place Japan. There was a dude who came to my programming classes when I was in college who on the very first day wore a kimono. And when the teacher was talking about if and for loops, raised his hand and then compared it to, I think, the Haruhi Endless 8 episodes and went on a tirade about that. I don't like to judge people I don't know, and I didn't know this guy. I probably would have been his friend if we knew each other better. You can like anime. It is not cringe or stupid to like anything. If you have an interest, take part in that interest and make yourself happy. But I know how I felt about that guy in the moment. Not in this place that I have now where I have the comfort to step back and look at him and observe how he acts and give him a kinder benefit of the doubt. But in the moment where he was just disrupting class, I was filled with this dread. How long is this going to go on for? Oh God, this is embarrassing. I know the teacher doesn't like this. I know everybody else in this class doesn't like this. I have that assumption of how people generally perceive folks that engage with anime. There's this kind of, oh my God, look at the cringe sort of perspective that I externally apply onto other people when thinking about how you observe somebody that likes anime and likes manga and engages with it in that kind of way. I do not get to decide what the cultural consciousness thinks about people who watch anime or who engage with Japanese media generally. And my understanding is that it's just gonna be cringe. It's just gonna be this cringy, oh my God, when is this gonna end? This guy is disrupting class kind of perspective. It's not kind, it's not generous. The hardest part of learning for me is doing it in a space with other people in it. I wish I was brave enough to just take my little Linux Mint laptop to a Starbucks, throw on Lucky Star or some shit, and just watch it, have my little notebook out, have my Rikaitan dictionary search up, my clipboard autocopy, all set up, all perfect. But the way that I expect strangers to think about me, if I do that, kills me. It scares me to hell. I don't want to be seen like that. I don't want to be perceived when I'm studying Japanese. I am ashamed to be studying Japanese. I wish I could sit in a cocoon from right now until the day that I can actually speak meaningful Japanese and be understood and communicate with people, connect with other people. And I realize I have such a cruel perception of strangers in this scenario, right? Where they just look at me and go, oh, cringe, look at what they're doing. Oh God, that's so embarrassing. In like 13 days, I'm going to be in Tokyo. Other people are going to see me, right? When I check into my hotel, am I going to check in using English or using Japanese? How am I expected to do that? What are the expectations placed on me as a foreigner? When I was a kid, one of the things that the church put in my brain was that the outside world is cruel, right? That's how cults operate. Inside the community is kind and it's understanding and it's good to one another. All the other people are the bad of the world. What we as Christians were supposed to go out and correct. Go out and share the good word, right? But as it is, the world is scary. Other people are scary. That I have this perfect viewpoint. I have this perfect understanding perspective, and that other people do not. I was in a Discord about Japanese news and travel, and I asked the question, if I am not good at Japanese, is it okay for me to go to the places I want to go? Is it okay for me to go to some like indie bookstore? Is it okay for me to go to a concert? Is it okay for me to go to less well-known arcades? I don't know if what I'm projecting onto these theoretical Japanese strangers that have to interact with me will be pity, or if it will be that same stupid pseudo-Catholic, culty, the outside world is scary idea, right? In my brain, some service worker is going to look at me and go, oh God, it's an American, it's just another tourist that I have to deal with. I don't know how to tell myself that it's okay for me to check into a hotel or to go to a store I want to go to. I dedicate so much of my time to passing. There is no act I can put on that makes me okay at Japanese. There's no act I can put on that makes me not feel so much shame having to talk to an employee that is not paid enough to deal with me. I love learning languages, and I've always wanted to learn Japanese. And I fucking hate the idea of learning Japanese because of what it does to how I perceive myself. I'm not gonna quit learning Japanese because I enjoy it, and it's a huge part of how I spend my time. But I hate the fact that I am a Japanese learner, because on one hand, I don't know Japanese, so it's not cool for me to do it, and on the other hand, I am perceived as just another gaijin motherfucker who likes anime. I don't spend my time watching anime, and it's not bad to watch anime, but the fact that I'm doing it now makes me feel awful. It makes me feel like I'm better than this. Like I should be watching better media than a couple of fucking anime schoolgirls talking about how best to sear their steak. The biggest conclusion that I draw from thinking like this is that I need to be better at just doing stuff and not thinking about how other people view me and other people's perspectives. The fact that I am doing something is cool enough on its own, right? I think I have this cruel idea of people who are learning Japanese because I see how much time I lack and how much passion I don't have, right? Like, I don't watch anime. I don't read manga otherwise. And I see somebody with the capacity to do that, and that's not just passion to me, that's money, and that's time. I see somebody with so much more time and money than I have, and I give them this sort of cruel weight over their heads of perception. I view them in this cruel way that doesn't make sense. Because, I'm the good one and the outside world is bad, right? So this is just... I need to teach myself not to both look at people that are doing what I'm doing with any malice or any preconceived disgust or notion in my heart. And I also need to just do what I'm doing regardless of how people are going to perceive what I'm doing, right? If I feel like what I'm doing is shameful and I need to hide it, it is going to become shameful. If I'm watching anime or reading a book at work and a coworker walks in and I stuff it away, then they're going to assume, like I assume, that it's a shameful act, that what I'm doing is wrong in some way. It is not wrong to learn languages. It is cool to learn languages. I'm gonna be in Japan in 13 days, and I'm going to use it as a great opportunity to keep learning Japanese, because that's what I wanted to spend it doing. And I'm going to be okay when I fumble in front of everybody, because I'm gonna fumble in front of everybody. And I'm going to be an obnoxious gaijin every once in a while. And it is cool to be an obnoxious gaijin. Yeah. Yeah, okay.